Hello, concerned citizens. My name is Veronica. Welcome to Saving Gen Z. I created Gen Z to help awaken the world to the dangers facing our children. Disclaimer. This video is not meant to bully, harass, or incite violence of any kind. I am a qualified medical and therapeutic professional, but the statements made in this video are not meant to be substituted for your or your child's private physician or therapist care. The materials used in the making of this video is permitted under the Fair Use Act. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share the videos. This helps promote the channel and educate the masses. Thank you, subscribers and supporters. Please help me support this channel by purchasing some merch or one of my best-selling books and become a Patreon. I hold monthly giveaways on Patreon and post bonus material. You can also follow me on Twitter. All links will be in the description box below. Now let's join together and build a better today so we can have a better tomorrow by questioning the narrative. Hello, this is Veronica of Saving Gen Z. Hello, concerned citizens. The topic we're going to cover is propaganda and indoctrination on the college campus. This can be shocking to many, okay? And there is a couple of explicit topics and videos that I'm going to show, so fair warning, okay? But it's stuff that needs to be seen because too many people in the dark. And I've had it. I'm over it. Okay, it's time for us to open our eyes as parents, as concerned citizens, as just plain humans. Okay, it's time for us to see the truth that's around us because Gen Z is being indoctrinated by heavy propaganda, especially when they're away at school, on college campuses. Okay? Let's see what's going on and what the heck they're doing to our kids when they go away to school. Like I said, I'm a Generation Xer. I have a Generation Yer and a Zer. Both. My Generation Zer is away at college, and the Y, Generation Y Millennia, she's done. But still, this propaganda didn't start up when she was in college. It's full-blown, full blast now. Started around 2016, 2015 with this type of propaganda. Okay, so let's go. Hope you're brave for this. Alrighty. First thing here. This is what you call a consent fair. It is the consent carnival, which happens to be going around many college campuses. Okay, I'm not going to play the sound because it's just music. I'm just going to play for you what is going on. We could already see immediately, right? But that's okay, right? Because even when I was in college, when I was, in college, and I went to an all-girls school, so didn't have it there. It was all-girl Catholic school. But I know my sister who went to public school in high school, there was a gay and lesbian student council, a gay and lesbian club. Now they call it LGBTQRST+++++. Okay, here we go. I made an error during recording, so I'm sliding this in for you guys, okay? Oops, I hope I didn't trigger anybody. Just go to your safe space. As we scroll in closer, we get to see what's going on. Yes, that is the penis ring toss. This is what your 17-year-old, 18-year-old, this is what your teenager gets to see. And this was put on by the Student Health Services. The gender unicorn, because now they're trying to sell that there's no such thing as gender, that your chromosomes don't matter, your body chemistry does not matter. And here are the different flavored condoms. Okay? Different condoms, different flavored condoms that they're giving out to the kids on campus. And of course, all this can be done without your consent because 18 and over. But here's the issue. I finished high school by the time I was 16. I was on college campus. Thank God they didn't have this insanity going on. But this is what our kids are seeing now. That's supposed to be a huge labia. The labia toss. Just soak it in. Soak it in. This is, look at these young people. And this is the propaganda being pushed by an actual department of the school, along with some Hershey Kisses, right? With some candy. Draw them in. How old do you think this little guy is? Right here. Look at him. Makes me think of my son and his friends. I'm going to play the entire video because you guys need to see this. Look at this. They were doing penis balloons. Because this is what's important in campus. I went to St. John's University in New York, okay? And I was a cheerleader, and when I was there, I remember the lacrosse team on an on-campus party raping a cheerleader, which is why I quit the cheerleading squad. And that goes on a lot because, you know what, there's a, look at it, lubricant taste testing. So this is supposed to be safe sex, not about abstinence, okay? Not teaching that. And it gets worse, actually. And they're, again, with this propaganda pushing of there's no such thing as gender. Gender is a social construct. Yes, there is some social construct that goes along with each gender, but gender is very much based in biology. Very, very much based in biology. But they're pushing this propaganda on our students. And, you know, they're starting when they're only, they start when they're only in kindergarten now, right? In a lot of aspects. So that's what's going on the college campus over there. And lawmakers in California, geez, I don't know what's going on with y'all in California, but there's a bill that was passed in California in September. California lawmakers passed a bill on Friday, this was September, forcing all taxpayer-funded universities in the state to offer the free chemical abortion pill to students on campus by 2023. Free abortion pills on campus. Tell me that's not a type of consent for certain behavior. But beyond that, as a medical professional, especially working in the ER, I have seen girls as young as 14, was the youngest I've seen come in through the ER, who took the abortion pill on their own. You don't need parental consent, right? At the Planned Parenthood clinics, ended up almost bleeding to death. Of course, at the hospital, we had to call her parents in, and we had to tell them what's going on because she was only 14. But You don't need parental consent to take an abortion pill. That could kill you, and you could bleed to death, which is what almost happened to this girl who ended up needing 6 bags of blood to be transfused into her. Stat. So I'm not, I'm not coming here. I don't believe in conservative or liberal or any of that type of garbage. I don't take that type of stand. My stand is for the health and well-being of our kids. That is where I stand. And this is nothing more than agenda pushing. Okay? The legislation SB 24 was introduced in December 2017 December 2017. Was introduced in December by State Senator Colleen Levy. I bet you she wouldn't let her daughter do it if she had a child. I bet you. It would require student health centers on all University of California and California State University campuses to offer chemical abortions to students up to 10 weeks of pregnancy. CBN News previously reported that the drug, we know it, RU486, which ends the life of an unborn child, cause severe cramping, contractions, and bleeding to expel the baby from the womb, are used together with chemical abortions. Okay? Students for Life of America, SFLA, President Christine Hawkins said California legislators are riskily experimenting with students. Yes, they are. And it has to do with this, with Big Pharma, okay? Lives and health by advocating a plan to force school health centers to become abortion vendors, pushing chemical abortion pills to force an intentional miscarriage. These toilet bowl abortions, which is what we call them actually, unofficially in the hospital. Toilet bowl abortions would create havoc on campuses as girls are sent to their dorm bathrooms to bleed and pass an aborted infant in a toilet without medical supervision or assistance, Hawkins said. And here's a nurse who's going to echo exactly what I just said when it comes to the health risk of doing this.
If I could really educate anyone on the abortion pill, the first thing that I would talk about before I speak about regret or anything else or the lies that it sells women and betrays women with is just the danger medically. As a nurse, I think that's the biggest thing that I want people to know is that you don't know what's going to happen when you take that. Every person's body responds differently to it. Some women, they do have a successful abortion. It's not extremely painful. They don't need to be on narcotics after they take it. But other women, and I think the majority of women, experience symptoms that they've never experienced before and don't know how to handle.
And it is the majority.
I think that one of the main symptoms that girls can look for to know that something's not going right is if they're saturating multiple pads in an hour, if they're bleeding more blood out than what their body can keep in to keep their heart pumping. That's a huge issue. But I think most women aren't educated enough to measure that. They don't know what's bad. They know they were supposed to expect a significant amount of blood. Mm-hmm. So how do you really measure a significant amount of blood? Another thing that I think most people don't really think about is that there's such a thing as ectopic pregnancies. So when you give a woman the abortion pill who in fact has an ectopic pregnancy, that can go completely unfounded. She'll think that she shed the pregnancy, she'll bleed, contract, everything's fine, and she will start moving on with her life thinking she's no longer pregnant, but in fact still is pregnant, and that pregnancy is somewhere outside of her uterus. So she's completely not expecting it and not looking for the symptoms. And if that ruptures inside of her, she can very likely die. It's horrific, honestly, to imagine a woman taking the abortion pill and then the second set of pills in a dorm room or in a school where she has to attend class the next day and hasn't started bleeding yet. Unfortunately, we don't know, like I had mentioned earlier, we don't know when a woman is going to start the actual miscarriage and abortion process. Some women take that second pill and it's not until 2 or 3 days later that they start actually bleeding and following through with the action on what the pill is supposed to do. So she might think, did it not work? Is the baby still alive? This is just a waiting game. It's a ticking time bomb where you wait for those contractions to induce. And that means that your uterus is literally preparing to shed out the contents that are inside of it. And when that happens, she can bleed from anywhere to 1 hour to many, many weeks. And it's heavy bleeding. You're saturating pads. You're not able to get up and go to class. You're pretty much stuck to your toilet. So if you're in a shared bathroom in a dorm where you have girls coming in and out, having no idea what's going on, that's not private at all. That's horrific, and that's one of the most lonely things. I think that it's more lonely than it is private.
My sentiments exactly. And it's not that I have some anti-abortion stance, though I'll make it very clear, I don't believe in second or third trimester abortions unless it has to do with saving a life. Okay. So I really wanted to do that. The FDA has documented at least 4,000 cases of serious adverse events, including more than 1,000 women who required hospitalization. In addition, at least 22 died after using the drug. Why don't I believe those stats? I don't trust the FDA as far as I can frickin' throw them from what I've seen working in the medical field, okay? So that's something that is being offered in California, unfortunately. It's the only state where this bill has passed. Let's pray that it doesn't spread anywhere else, okay? But it's I've seen time and time again, looks like California is the testing ground for all this type of stuff. When it comes to the sexualization of children, no shocker there, especially with Hollyweird, you know, the whole trans agenda, all this, it's like has a real foothold in California. Here's a shot of a table at a fair where Planned Parenthood is on a college campus. There are many of these photos. This is the best one where they have, these are actually flavored condoms looking like lollipops. Okay. This is, again, being given to your teenager. Okay, now we're going to jump to the topic of gender inclusive housing. Okay, gender inclusive housing. I picked one of the big universities that has it. I had a client write to me, and she said it was okay for me to share her story. I was looking for the letter she sent me, actually. But like her name is all over it, so there would be a lot of redacting. So I was like, you know what, let me just talk about it instead. Her daughter, who is very, you know, liberal-minded, as you could, if you want to use that word, when it comes to the whole gender thing. She drank the you know, rainbow Kool-Aid. Okay. The whole thing with the whole there's no such thing as gender being sold to these college students, and that gender fluidity where I could wake up tomorrow and say I'm a dude and look exactly how I look right now and say, hey, I'm a guy, and everybody has to buy into my insanity. Okay. So on her college campus, they have the whole gender inclusive housing. Okay. Because it's all under the guise of inclusivity. Let's talk about it. Gender inclusive housing. Penn State strives to provide a safe for who? Not for the girls or the guys. Provide safe, inclusive. Inclusivity is one of their buzzwords, okay, for their propaganda, to push propaganda. Comfortable and supportive living environment for all students residing on campus. Gender inclusive housing, commonly known as gender neutral housing, is an option for students who identify as transgender. Again, all you have to do is identify as whatever. Never mind what's between your legs. And gender non-conforming. In other words, you're a what or an it. The ability to select a room assignment that meets the individual needs or requests a roommate of any gender. So you trample the rights over of the many for the rights of the few. Insane. I'm just going to put it out there. The insanity of it all, okay? So they go on to talk about their wonderful gender inclusivity thing, housing, okay? Now what happened to this girl who was all about okay with the whole inclusivity thing, and her friends, they had someone who decided they were going to identify one day as a trans female, not on hormones, didn't have any type of surgery, but is a trans female. Well, they got a rude awakening when they're waking up by this trans female trying to molest them. When they went to complain, nothing was done until they finally went and complained to their parents, and their parents came and shut everything down. And it took a lot for them to get this sexual predator out of their daughter's rooms. He didn't just try feeling them up at night, but was also barging in when they were in the bathroom, because now they have gender inclusive bathrooms also, so you can't even get away from it and go to take a shower in peace without these people who want to wake up one day because they're so confused. I mean, honestly, I feel sorry for them, but that doesn't mean I'm going to put my child at risk for you. No, no. Go get the help you need. But they're drinking the Kool-Aid, the rainbow Kool-Aid, and they're eating up the propaganda, and they have adults who are their professors running the school system pushing the propaganda. Okay, so they're buying into it. I have a very close friend who I've known almost all my life, so I know her children. I've known her daughter since birth, before birth I should say, while she was pregnant, made her first dress, I'm proud to say that. And she went off to college and drank the rainbow Kool-Aid, okay, and was buying all into it. And besides this craziness of the whole inclusivity, dorms and the non-gender bathrooms, she also brought into the whole, we'll get into that insanity later. Yeah, okay. She brought into the whole gender studies major. Gender studies major. Now, that didn't exist when I went to college. I went to St. John's University. With gender studies, there was women's studies. Not too many kids majored in it because honestly, when you graduate with your 4-year degree after paying, depending on what school you go in, hundreds and thousands of dollars, sometimes not even your money, it's your parents' money, you graduate with a useless degree, okay? But here's a school right here. I went to several colleges who offer gender studies, and it's all the same garbage that they spout, okay, when it comes to description of their gender studies and what you can do with a gender studies degree. I'll tell you exactly what my friend's daughter is doing with her gender studies degree. She graduated this year. She's making close to minimum wage, helping a husband and wife when they do fairs, selling food. Organic food, though. Yeah. She can't find a job, along with her other little buddies. And now she's in extreme depression and anxiety, breaking out, eczema everywhere, extreme depression and anxiety. Because she switched a major that made sense, that when she'd come out of school, she'd find something to do with it, into gender studies. And decided to identify as non-binary now also. Okay. And again, I knew this girl before she was even born. I'm very, very close to her. So, yeah. Okay, what can I do with a degree in women, gender, and sexuality studies? Okay, places of employment. Mind you, all these links end up being blank, right? That I clicked on. Women, gender, and sexuality study majors develop skills that are highly valued by employers. These skills include critical thinking, research, analysis, oral and written communication, presentation, and problem-solving skills. Okay, that's very generic, isn't it? Any major gives you those things, right? Women, gender, and sexuality studies majors may find employment in a variety of areas depending on their skills and experience. You're a college student graduating. What experience? What, unless you had something useful and you're able to get a job, a part-time job in that same field, which is what I did in college. And most of these they'll major in gender studies and minor in something else that's completely useless also, like my friend's daughter did. Okay, which is why, especially in the U.S., no skilled workers coming out of college with $200,000 in debt and nothing to show for it. Zip, zero, nada. Some women, gender, and sexuality study graduates choose to work in advocacy and social services. Yeah, here's the thing. Instead of, why not major in social services, where you could go out and qualify for a job and then get your master's, be working on your master's as a social worker. If you come out with this type of a degree in gender studies, you don't qualify for anything. And we're going to show you exactly what you qualify for when you're studying this. Yes, there's even masters in gender studies too. Community development, business and government. I don't know, SJW, protesting with a pussy hat on your head. Is that your I don't know, community service and development? Career-related internships and part-time jobs may be a prerequisite to finding professional level employment after graduating in this and other fields. Yeah. These are the advisories and stuff like that. And you know, I clicked on the links. Let's click on the links and see what we can get. Join the Rutgers Student Alumni Working Group. Okay. Same garbage, like I said. It's just, and it leads you nowhere. It's a circle. Okay? Unless you want to become a professor in it and perpetuate the fraud. Okay? And again, this is nothing more than a trend. It's an agenda that's being pushed right now, and it has to do with that separation of men and women. It has to do with that breakup of the family. They have to penetrate. They penetrate. The propaganda machine starts in the school system. Okay? And here's what you can do with your gender studies. Here's a gender study person right now. In fact, she's pretty famous. This is actually her side channel, but this gives a more intimate look into what she's up to. Shall we?
Hey, Lindsay here. Today I want to talk about if all kids are queer. So we know that kids are strange and kind of weird, but I think that all kids are actually just real queer. So bear with me on this one. We might get a little academic here because I'm in the middle of my master's dissertation and I'm writing about this. So excuse all the academic talk. But okay, so basically I've been reading about this theory in queer studies called the theory of the queer child, which was basically coined by this lady, Catherine Bond Stockton, in this book, The Queer Child, or Growing Sideways in the 20th Century. I know it's a really weird book cover, but whatever. And she talks about this theory in terms of metaphors in movies and books and all that cool stuff. So that's this, and then there's also this book of essays called Curiouser on the Queerness of Children, edited by Stephen Brom and Natasha Hurley, and this is a collection of essays. One of them is by Catherine Bond Stockton. There's also one by Eve Sedgwick, and a bunch of other big names in queer theory. So basically what this is talking about is the queerness of children and how queer kids are, and basically saying that all children are queer. So Catherine Botten Stockton has these 4 ways that children can be queer. The first is the ghosted gay child, the second is the grown homosexual, then there's the Freudian queer child, or the not yet straight child, and there's also the child queered by innocence or money. So let's just go through those real quick. The first, the ghosted gay child, is basically what she talks about when gay people talk about how they always knew that they were gay. I totally knew that I was gay from when I was a real little kid.
Which is absolutely fine. Having worked in pediatrics for so long and also adolescent psychology, you know who the gay kids are immediately. You know before they know. I mean, especially when it comes to the boys, it's very easy to tell and see. Okay? And again, there is nothing wrong with that. It is when you're sitting there and pushing this propaganda that everybody's queer, everybody's gay. No, it's a small portion of the population. When doing that, it actually diminishes, especially when it comes to gender dysmorphia. It diminishes the seriousness of the situation with gender dysmorphic kids. And again, I have dealt directly and counseled gender dysmorphic kids, males and females. Okay, again, this is nothing more than agenda pushing. And watch the way she... First of all, with the people that she's quoting and these books, something tells me they've never actually cared for children. Neither is she. I want to talk to her parents immediately.
Kid, but I just kind of didn't have the vocabulary for it yet, and also just didn't understand it at all. So that's the ghosted gay child. Then there's the grown homosexual, who is the kind of projector of that idea of the...
One more point. I see this a lot with homosexual people, especially when they're younger, so like her in their 20s, when their families rejected their homosexuality, when whoever they're around, they had a difficult time coming out to. They turn around and it's like this. It's like everybody's gay now. Since I'm gay, everybody's gay, and it's a projection thing. So, they found a perfect person to use to push a certain propaganda. Because, like I said, her other channel is pretty big. And if you look at my video before about the sexualization of children, she did a TED Talks. I put her video up there. I actually was going to do a TED Talks, and I turned it down because of the propaganda they're starting to push. With pedophilia as just minor attracted people. They had a psychologist up there trying to push that propaganda, and they had her pushing the propaganda, all kids are gay.
The ghosted gay child, so that's kind of just me as present projecting that notion of me as a child knowing that I was gay, even though I didn't really have that concept back then. She goes into it further, obviously, in the book. And then there's the third one, the child queered by Freud, or the not yet straight child. She uses Freud to talk about how children are all homosexual,
and then society pushes you into heterosexuality.
There's basically the ghostly straight child, because people kind of assume that children are asexual and they're not really allowed to be sexual, but Freud kind of turns that on its head and basically says, no, all children are sexual.
And Freud has been debunked hard. So again, something tells me, not for nothing, I'd love to get her on a chair and talk to her about, what she went through. Has she ever been molested? Seriously?
And yeah, even if they're straight. So that's kind of basically the same thing as the ghostly gay child, but it's the ghostly straight child. Then the last one is the child queered by innocence, or queered by color/money. Innocence is this adult construct that's kind of put onto children.
Again, do you see where she's coming from? That a child is not innocent when it comes to sexuality. that they're born as these sexual beings who are horny, basically. Again, my professional opinion is that this chick has a heck of a life, and I would love to get into her records, her personal records. It really seems to me, as a professional, that she has a past that she might have been molested.
And it doesn't really match up with what kids are and do. And she talks about that as a kind of queerness and that kind of mismatching of the adult ideal of children, and how the idea of child itself is kind of this adult nostalgic construction. And then the child queered by money or color basically talks about kids who are already kind of under umbrellas of adult queerness, and how those kids don't really get that projection of innocence upon them because they are kind of the younger versions of queer adults. And
again, it is trying to break down and sexualize children from birth, meaning that if a 40-year-old wants to have sex with a 2-year-old, that is fine, because that person, that child, hey, sex is, a kid saying they want an ice cream is the same thing as saying they want to have sex with a 40-year-old, according to this chick and her gender queer study professors.
And so they're kind of queered by their race status or their economic status. Okay, then there's the last one of children being queered by the economy. Kids are totally cut off from adult normative economies because they just don't contribute to it. Like most kids' relationship with money is the weekly allowance, and I think that makes kids really queer. And the only real way for kids to be involved in the economy is if you're an emancipated minor, which interestingly enough is not a possibility in the UK, things I didn't know before. And yeah, I think kids not really being able to be involved in kind of capitalist normative society just contributes to their queerness. And yeah, so that's kind of the theory, the overall theory. I think it's really interesting, and I kind of agree. I mean, I think if you've ever just kind of seen a kid do a weird thing, kids are totally weird. I mean, they eat their own boogers.
Exactly. Kids eat their own boogers. So a kid who eats their own boogers, can't change their diaper, knows about sex, is born knowing they want sex. But do you see how she contradicts herself? And the whole queer study thing contradicts itself, because they always, and they say, the LGBTQ people say, oh, don't try to stick a P, pedophilia, onto our whatever letters. But here's one of your big representatives right here with the queer and gender studies and all these dang professors in their stupid books who probably never even spoke to children or had any. Here they are, right in your face, talking about how, kids are born sexual and know what they want sexually from birth, but they eat their own boogers. And another point she's making, how kids are queer because they don't contribute to the economy. I don't know. I don't see my 3-year-old working. I don't know. What do you think she could do? According to you, maybe she could sell condoms.
So yeah, I think that just kind of puts them outside of normative society, and I think the fact that they don't have a voice within society is also really important.
Maybe because they don't talk.
I'd love to hear what you think about this topic. Feel free to leave a comment below. You can also go to beproud.tv where you can...
Okay, enough. Okay, that made me hot. All right. She's the one who does Queer Kid Stuff channel. Yeah, Queer Kid Stuff, yeah. Again, to me, she's nothing more than a shill being used to push this agenda of sexualizing children. You get the later Generation Zers to push it on the early Generation Zers to push it on the later Generation Zers, Their older brothers and sisters to push them on it. And then you have these professors who are coming up with these ridiculous, they got 3,000 thumbs down maybe enough people could see this and be woken up to it. So please share as much as possible to all your friends on all your social media platforms. Okay, now the next thing we're going to deal with. Yeah, we do the gender neutral dorms. Yeah, and more of them pushing it. This is a college, Getty Images, a college website talking, and what they try to make you do is feel guilty if you're not into gender neutral dorms, and you have to be comfortable. A young woman who moves into a co-ed dorm may be worried at first about men being in the hallways, lounges, and other communal areas. They may put on street clothes whenever they leave their room. However, many quickly find themselves at ease. So in other words, you know, hey, if you're not into it, you're not comfortable with yourself. You're not at ease with yourself. Which is why, besides having these guys who all of a sudden say they're women because women is a social construct and molest girls in their sleep because they're allowed to be in the room with them, sleeping in the bunk above them or below them for that matter, and molest them in the bathroom. Heck, that's okay, right? That's your fault as a woman. Or it could be the other way, you know, but it usually isn't. But a lot of guys, they what if I all of a sudden decided, yeah, okay, I'm a dude today, put me in a gender neutral dorm. I want to dorm with these guys, these bros here. A lot of guys are like, yo, no. I have a son. I've been around plenty of boys. I was the mom with all the kids in our house. Yeah, teenagers don't like that. They really don't. Teenagers don't like that. Maybe when they're much older, but teenagers, they're not into that. Not at all. They want their privacy. They want their privacy. And to force them, yeah, this is not happening. No, this is BS. This is BS. It's going to crash and burn real fast. And I hope something real bad doesn't happen. Just like the abortion pills being given out like Tic Tacs and being forced by universities to comply and give them out. Hopefully that won't happen. Now here's another thing going around. First, we're going to explain what the heck a snowflake is. This is an awesome term because it is really coming into being. And it has to do with all these things being put together on Gen Z, especially the college age ones, okay? What is a snowflake? A snowflake is a sensitive young person. A snowflake is a derogatory term. I don't find it derogatory. It's very descriptive. Used to describe a young person who is easily offended, too emotionally vulnerable to deal with challenging views, and non-resilient compared to other generations. And this is Generation Z, man. It comes from the, and Generation Y also. Generation Z and Y. The later Generation Yers, yeah. It comes from the fragility of a snowflake that easily melts when it comes in contact with an object. Okay, so this is, Fight Club originated the term snowflake. Keep your free speech out of my safe space. That's a funny meme. I like that. And again, I'm not into the whole political back and forth BS. I don't believe in it at all. But yeah, I totally believe in that term snowflake because of what I've been seeing and dealing with. Okay, now here's an example of a snowflake. Okay, we're going to listen to a couple of snowflakes. Okay, here we go.
If we want to defeat capitalism, we are going to need a party that will organize working people to fight for the demands that we want and to win socialism. Thank you so much.
Do you see what they're doing in the audience?
Quick point of personal privilege.
Yeah.
Guys, first of all, James Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. I just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making it very difficult for me to focus. Please, can we just, I know we're all
Jazz hands, jazz hands, jazz
keep the chatter
hands.
to a minimum. It's affecting my ability to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, is there a speaker
Comrade.
against name, chapter, pronoun?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Okay.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam Lewis, he, him, I'm from the New York City DSA chapter. This very simple amendment is to strike the language about forming an independent party. I want, in conversation with the authors of the proposal since, I think we're all in agreement that we do want to build a mass organization, political organization of the working class that vies for state power. So it's not an attempt to get rid of that shared goal. The problem with the language as I see it is that it counterposes forming an independent working class party with the tactical use of the Democratic line. So it's basically saying in the future we will break with our tactical use of the Democratic line. I think many of us have an agnostic position on that question, right? We want to behave in the most strategic way as class politics in this country develops. We don't want to commit to what has historically been a failed strategy in the United States of forming a third-party ballot line. So I consider this a friendly debate. I will be voting for the proposal whether or not this passes, but I think it's important to discuss.
That was actually the shorter clip. There's a longer clip because those other two at the point of personal privilege, they come back even more agitated. Please stop the clapping and stop using gendered pronouns, because the one who's saying he, him, he said guys. So then the other one starts freaking out and they all just start freaking out all together. I want all their parents' phone numbers. I want to send the video to their parents, and I want to head up a lawsuit for their parents saying, give me my damn money back. For real. So this is what a snowflake sounds like. Okay? This is what's coming out of our colleges. This is what a snowflake sounds like. People who have to use jazz hands because everything triggers them. So that is what a snowflake sounds like, okay? Is what's being birthed in our colleges. Now let's go over the whole triggers and warnings and microaggressions. Now the whole microaggression is a very new term for me. I honestly never heard of microaggression until a couple of months ago. I didn't even know what the heck a microaggression was. But we're about to find out. Very interesting. This is a huge thing they're showing on college campuses.
They're called trigger warnings on college campuses. A cue to students that something controversial, potentially uncomfortable or upsetting, is about to be brought up in class or by a guest speaker. Critics believe they fuel a culture of political correctness and don't belong in an academic environment. Incoming freshmen at the University of Chicago received a somewhat unprecedented letter from the Dean of Students which said, quote, "Our commitment to academic freedom means that we do not support so-called trigger warnings. We do not cancel invited speakers because their topics might prove controversial." He went on, "Fostering the free exchange of ideas reinforces a related university priority, building a campus that welcomes people of all backgrounds." The letter sparked a national debate about how campuses should treat sensitive and potential...
Amen. Do you know who came to my campus? Excuse me. Remember, I graduated high school early. Do you know who came to my campus? Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson with Tawana Brawley. Anybody from back in the day, you'll know what the whole Tawana Brawley case is about, with this girl said she was kidnapped by some congressman or whatever, white congressman. They were trying to stoke a racial war thing going on in New York, said that she had feces smeared on her and they wrote nigger, but you know, when she did it backwards on her forehead. Yeah, not too smart. So yeah, talk about controversial. Okay, that's who came around rolling in my school, all right? So now it's about trigger warnings. Like if you're going to talk about a topic that might upset somebody, they're allowed to opt out, or you can't talk about it at all, even though it's you and 100 other people. So it's about catering to the minority who is soft and weak. and can't handle much of anything. This is what they're trying to breed, soft, weak snowflakes. So honestly, the world could be taken over and run over within a few years with no children being born, okay? Graduating with gender study degrees, confused as heck, and now they can't even stand so much as clapping. We're going to get into that. Weak.
Potentially offensive material. We talked to students on the Boston University campus about what they think of trigger warnings.
I think they're incredibly important because they're not related to free speech. It's just a courtesy of letting people know what's going to happen. It doesn't mean they have to stop the content or prevent the content from moving forward or being presented.
It sounds like it's something that could possibly violate your ability to speak freely and some things like that. I mean, I think the idea of college, right, is to encourage all kinds of speech and takes and perspectives.
Used to be.
And anything that restricts that is a little bit concerning.
Maybe like a trigger warning would have been like, hey, like we're going to talk about this. If you don't feel comfortable, like let me know.
And it's not just trigger warnings that are being scrutinized on campuses. There's so-called microaggressions, insults that might not have been intended to create harm, but can to certain groups of people. Take a look at a list of some of the words students at the University of New Hampshire were once advised to consider using to avoid what they consider to be offensive language. Homosexual was to be replaced with same-gender loving, elderly with people of advanced age, and healthy with non-disabled. Students were even advised to not use the word American because it suggested the United States was the only country in the Americas. Got all this? Not sure I do. So let's bring in Clark University Professor Eric DeBarris. Eric, it's good to meet you. And Gail Dines, chair of the American Studies program at Wheelock College. It's always great to see you, Gail.
Great to see you.
You do trigger warnings. Why?
I do trigger warnings because a lot of the courses I teach are around women's studies.
Yeah, here we
and
go.
if I'm teaching stuff around rape.
Okay, are we surprised? Women's studies, gender studies, are we surprised that she does trigger warnings? But if you take a class talking about rape, what do you expect is going to be discussed there? We're going to listen to this nonsense very briefly and move on.
Or incest or battery, then I do trigger warnings to let students know what's coming up. Now, I think there's been a confusion between trigger warnings and not teaching stuff or not saying stuff. All a trigger warning is getting students ready so that when it comes up, they don't, for those who've got histories of sexual abuse, they're not suddenly traumatized in
What
that
if a student
moment.
says, I can't handle this, I'm not going to be here for that?
I think if a student who has a history of sexual violence really feels at that moment in their life they can't handle it, I don't think they should be put through that, no.
Here's some of your course titles: Violence and Sexual Trauma, Porn, Prostitution, and Feminism. Does any student taking any of those courses not know that they're going to be uncomfortable topics that are broached by
It's
you?
not uncomfortable. I'm talking about trauma responses now.
Traumatizing. Do they not know from those?
No, a lot of them actually don't know, and I think it's really important. Again, we're not talking about silencing and not using this. We're talking about giving students a choice to say, maybe I have this very traumatic experience in my life and I'm not ready at this point in my life to deal with it, or yes I am, and at least I can get ready, because the trigger warnings go out at least two weeks before the class, and then again a week before, and then again the night
Do
before.
you do them, Mark?
No.
Why?
And because to a certain extent, the courses that I teach, Shakespeare, for instance, in the pedagogy of sexual violence, if we don't know that sexual violence is a significant part of Shakespeare, it raises questions for me about the way in which the Western literary tradition is taught to students before they get to college. So it's kind of surprising to me that students aren't already aware of the disturbing nature in the Western
So does she
literary
not
tradition.
persuade you that essentially a warning, not an excuse, is what she noticed? Let's put it that way. Not an excuse is what Gail Dines does in her class. Is that not an acceptable compromise for you? It's too much.
But I think to a certain extent it potentially simplifies a really complex pedagogical process, right? So what happens after the warning, right? Does that render the content less traumatic or disturbing to those students?
Does it?
Actually, yes. What it does is if they've had a warning beforehand, then they are able much more to deal with it in a scholarly fashion. What you don't want to have happen is the class to collapse into a kind of conscious raising session or therapy session.
But you not worry, Gail Dines, about it's slippery slope. I hate the term, but I'm using it. Slippery slope kind of thing. How do you decide what merits a trigger warning? The Columbia University newspaper said that Greek mythology merits a trigger warning. I find that so grotesquely offensive. It's unbelievable.
I have been teaching for 30 years. I know exactly what classes cause trauma and cause a lot of anxiety among students and what don't. So really, I think teachers know pretty well what causes that.
Should we trust individual teachers?
My point, excuse me, my point is that Greek literature, Greek philosophy, Greek literature is itself a trigger warning. And it's kind of surprising to me that we don't get that the Western literary tradition, as we inherit it, is saturated with these disturbing and traumatic instances.
Can I tell you, my major concern with this, I know you've heard this 1,000 times, so my apologies for a tired old argument, is when that young person in your class leaves your class, gets his or her diploma, and goes on to the world, they're not going to get a trigger warning. Lester Holt on the evening news is not going to say, no, it's 6:13, I'm going to have a story on rape at 6:17, a swastika was spray painted on a synagogue. They don't have those. So how are you preparing that young person for the real world?
Because
they're not. I don't care what comes out of this woman's mouth. They're not preparing them for the real world. Not at all. I'm looking at it right now, like I said, with my friend's daughter, completely unprepared. She was in SJW Heaven School, very big name college, who subscribed to all this nonsense. With these safe spaces, yes, you need now there's safe spaces, because if they get triggered, they need to go to a safe space, because when they come out in the world, oh, they're going to have their little safe space. Okay? Now, yeah, let's address this. Here's another thing. This is like the epitome of it all. Okay, let's listen to this. What they're putting into practice. It's not just suggestion anymore. Okay, this is the slippery slope.
A British university is banning clapping at campus events.
It's more than one university.
The school student union is silencing clapping, whooping, and cheering. They say loud noises can be disrespectful and a trigger for students with autism. Now jazz hands will be enforced at games, concerts, and graduations. So DBL Nation, do you applaud this effort? Let's get right to your comments.
X from Twitter says, how does clapping trigger anxiety? It has nothing to do with accessibility either. Don't you know you aren't supposed to use jazz hands, but you are to snap your fingers? I don't know what jazz...
It's actually sign language for clapping,
okay, okay. But if you're at student events, aren't you...
I honestly, with jazz hands, jazz hands, I don't know. I thought, like, bring it on, jazz hands. You know, yeah, jazz hands.
You're supposed to clap. You're rallying for your students. You feel great. You have the emotions. I get it that there are people with autism there, but we have to find a way, since they're the minority that's in that group. You can't tell what 1,000 people to do that.
I'm not sure it's going to work either, actually. Yeah. Abby from Twitter says, as someone with diagnosed anxiety and sensory issues, you make it worse by avoiding the trigger. This is phenomenal, by the way. Yeah. Clapping is too common for someone to avoid it, so getting used to it and coping with the sound and sight will benefit the patient in the long run. This is a phenomenal. I know people like my...
Again, that is a great tweet, and you could tell the person who wrote that tweet is is somebody with some type of sense, if not a professional, in the medical field or in the psychological, sociological field. You could tell this person has some type of sense, okay? Yeah, this whole avoidance of real life is making a snowflake generation. A group of people who need to be coddled 24/7, who are triggered and afraid of everything. Words hurt and offend them. Whatever happened to sticks and stones don't break my bones. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. This is a slippery slope. Well, we've already fell down the hill.
My family members, we have to leave restaurants. If it's too much clinking or too much sound, they hear everything at the same level, so it's very anxiety-provoking. However, to your point, Al Jackson and I talked about this, and he suggested headphones be given out, or earplugs, so that you're not saying I'm autistic. I think that's, use technology, right?
And Nancy from Twitter says, although I appreciate the thoughtfulness, I remember my son with autism being so stressed about fire alarms, and his grade school was next door to the firehouse. The teachers worked with him, especially during the planned drills, much better. That's great. I think anytime you can work with special needs kids and students, it's always for the betterment. I have a cousin who's autistic, and there are things that potentially could trigger him as well. So I think we have to find that balance, because when I first read the story, I was like, oh gosh, so this is a snowflake thing, and then I realized, no, it's far deeper than this. This is something that affects a lot of different people.
You see the awareness? See the awareness?
Yeah, I think the awareness
Great
is a good
comments
thing.
there.
And thoughtful.
It's a snowflake thing. Okay. Yeah. It's a snowflake thing. I find this horrifying. I hope this helps some of you parents out there, or even if you have nieces and nephews, or a friend, or yourself, if you're a Gen Zer or Gen Yer watching this, make you more aware of how you're being targeted, all right? And, to help guide your children so they could have actual futures in the real world, out of a safe space. All right, Veronica out. Bye.